Well, Stephen McBee just made his entrance on season 2 of the McBee Dynasty, Real American Cowboys. And as usual, drama soon followed. As you may recall, Stephen pleaded guilty to committing the crime of insurance fraud after an FBI investigation. He will be sentenced on September 9, 2025. His fraud caused the United States Department of Agriculture to lose over $4 million. And Stephen is staring down a possible 30-year prison term, which is a lot for the family to handle. During McBee Dynasty Season 2, Episode 7, Stephen made his first appearance at a dinner in Nashville to celebrate his son Jesse McBee's birthday. Stephen McBee Sr. was caught in 2 off-camera arguments on McBee Dynasty. Stephen shared that during his absence, he was trying to wrap up some dealings in Nashville with the hope that he could return to the farm soon. Unfortunately, during dinner, Stephen began receiving a barrage of phone calls. So he went to the restroom, and behind a closed door and on a hot mic, he argued with his girlfriend, Masha. "What the F*** kick? What are you doing?" Stephen asked. "I'm in the middle of dinner with 15 people." Then he shouted, "Do not come down here. I will see you in a few days. I don't have time for this. Yikes." However, Masha ignored Stephen and went to Nashville. The windows of both Stephen and Stephen McBee Jr.'s trucks were smashed. Stephen Jr. assumed that Masha was probably the culprit. When Masha turned up at the house to drop off something for Stephen, the couple had another blow-up. Once again, viewers were privy to the conversation because of Stephen's mic. "You flew down here? That's crazy," Stephen Sr. exclaimed. "Why are you lying to me? I know she's staying here," Masha replied, seeming to reference Stephen's ex and her former bestie, Galina Salkovska. After giving Stephen the one-finger salute, she departed. The late August air hung heavy and humid over the sprawling McBee ranch, a familiar blanket of discomfort that settled deep in Stephen McBee Sr.'s bones. It was a discomfort that had nothing to do with the weather and everything to do with the storm brewing inside him, a storm that threatened to engulf everything he held dear. September 9, 2025. The date loomed large, a gallows in his mind. 30 years. The number echoed like a death knell. 30 years, a lifetime for a mistake that had cost the USDA over $4 million. Insurance fraud. The FBI investigation had been relentless, and his guilty plea, a bitter pill to swallow, offered little solace. The ranch, his life's work, felt alien to him these days. Every creak of the barn, every lowing of a cow, every sunrise painting the fields in hues of gold and amber. They were reminders of a future he might never see. His sons, Jesse and Stephen Jr., were trying to hold it all together, but the strain was palpable. He saw it in Jesse's tired eyes, in Stephen Jr.'s increasingly short temper. The McBee Dynasty, the show that had once promised to immortalize their way of life, now felt like a cruel spotlight, illuminating his downfall for the world to see. Nashville nights and unraveling threads. The call from Jesse about his birthday dinner in Nashville had been a welcome distraction, a brief reprieve from the suffocating reality of his situation. He told the cameras he was trying to wrap up some dealings in Nashville, a convenient lie to explain his absence. He craved the normalcy of family, the boisterous energy of a celebration, even if it was just for a few hours. Nashville buzzed with an unfamiliar energy, a stark contrast to the quiet solitude of the ranch. The restaurant was a cacophony of laughter and clinking glasses. Seeing Jesse, his eldest, beaming amidst friends and family, brought a fleeting warmth to Stephen's chest. For a moment, he could almost forget. But the reprieve was short-lived. His phone, a relentless harbinger of chaos, began to vibrate with a familiar intensity. Masha. He excused himself, the polite smiles from his dinner companions feeling like 1,000 tiny needles. He retreated to the supposed sanctuary of the restroom, the heavy door closing behind him, a flimsy barrier against the world. He fumbled with his phone, his thumb hovering over the answer button. He knew with a sinking feeling what was coming. "What the f***? What are you doing?" The words were out before he could temper them, his voice laced with a frustration that had been simmering for weeks. He could feel the heat of the hot mic clipped to his shirt, knowing every syllable was being captured, every raw emotion laid bare for the reality show's audience. "I'm in the middle of dinner with 15 people. He ran a hand through his already disheveled hair, the weight of his predicament pressing down on him. Then a primal roar escaped him. "Do not come down here. I will see you in a few days. I don't have time for this." He slammed his hand against the tiled wall, the dull thud echoing in the small space. He knew, even as he spoke the words, that Masha would ignore him. She always did. Her unpredictability, once a thrilling challenge, had become a source of unending anxiety. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to wash away the exasperation, the fear, the creeping sense of helplessness. The dinner, once a beacon of normalcy, was now just another stage for his personal drama. The aftermath and a shattered peace. The next morning, the Nashville sunshine felt deceptively bright. Stephen woke with a knot in his stomach, a premonition of further trouble. He tried to shake off the previous night's phone call, to convince himself that Masha would heed his warning. He was wrong. A call from Stephen Jr. shattered the fragile peace of his morning. "Dad, you're not gonna believe this." Stephen Jr.'s voice was tight with suppressed anger. "Someone smashed the windows of both our trucks." Stephen's blood ran cold, he knew. Before Stephen Jr. even uttered the name he knew. "Masha?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Probably," Stephen Jr. confirmed, the single word dripping with resentment. "She's probably the culprit." A cold, hard rage began to simmer within Stephen. It was one thing to deal with his own mistakes, his own impending doom. It was another entirely for his family, for his sons, to be dragged into the chaos. He packed his bags, the urge to flee Nashville, to return to the relative quiet of the ranch, overwhelming him. A house divided. The drive back to the ranch was a blur of simmering anger and anxiety. He found Stephen Jr. surveying the damage to his truck, glass shards glittering on the driveway like malevolent diamonds. The sight ignited a fresh wave of fury. Just as he was about to confront his son about the logistics of repairs, a car pulled up the long gravel driveway. It was Masha. She emerged from the vehicle, a defiant set to her jaw, a small bag clutched in her hand. She strode towards them, her eyes fixed on Stephen, a challenge in their depths. "What are you doing here?" Stephen's voice was low, dangerous. He could feel the familiar weight of the hot mic on his shirt, a constant reminder of the unseen audience. He knew with a sickening certainty that this confrontation, like so many others, would be broadcast. "I came to drop something off for you," Masha said, her voice a deceptive calm. She held up the bag. "You flew down here? That's crazy," Stephen exclaimed, the exasperation bubbling to the surface. "Why are you lying to me?" He knew she was staying nearby, probably with one of her friends, a tangled web of deceit that seemed to constantly ensnare him. "I know she's staying here." The words were out before he could stop them. A reference to Galina Salkowska, his ex, and, until recently, Masha's best friend. The betrayal, the tangled relationships, it was all too much. Masha's eyes narrowed, a flash of something akin to pure venom in their depths. She took a step closer, her face contorted in a sneer. Without a word, she raised her hand, her middle finger extended in a defiant, vulgar salute. Then, she turned and marched back to her car, leaving Stephen and Stephen Jr. standing in the dust, the air thick with unspoken accusations and the lingering stench of betrayal. Stephen watched her car disappear down the driveway, the rage in his gut replaced by a hollow ache. His life was unraveling, piece by painful piece. The fraud, the looming prison sentence, the relentless drama of the reality show, and now the personal chaos that threatened to consume his family. He looked at Stephen Jr., whose face was a mirror of his own despair. "We need to get this sorted, Dad," Stephen Jr. said, his voice quiet but firm. "All of it." Stephen nodded slowly. Sorted. It was a monumental task, a mountain he wasn't sure he had the strength to climb. But looking at his son, at the resolute set of his jaw, he knew he had to try. For them, for the McBee dynasty, crumbling before his very eyes. The ranch, once a symbol of their strength, now felt like a fragile fortress constantly under siege. The countdown to September 9th continued, and Stephen McBee Sr. knew, with a chilling certainty, that the battle for his life, both personal and public, had only just begun.